but Duda had all the answers. So I agree with you, Ivanka. OK, not the queen's pawn, not the king's pawn either. It is the knight developing itself first, so the Reti opening, named after the Hungarian Grandmaster Richard Reti. It's actually my favourite move as well, bringing the white knight out. And OK, black reacts by just pushing a pawn in the centre. Compare openings, you compare certain positions, but you always that one move down, and that can be a crucial difference. And OK, Duda pretty much plays copycat there, pushing a pawn himself. OK, the bishop does develop. Black will do the same. Duda maybe just pouring himself some tea there. Yes. Maybe that's part of his routine, his superstitions.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, David, I was going to ask you to look ahead a few moves. And do you think that Magnus will challenge the black pawn in the centre immediately with like the c2, the c pawn, move it up 2 squares? Or do you think he's just going to wait a while and see what happens before he takes that commitment?
I was going to say he would wait a while. I've seen him play many, many online games, Magnus Carlsen, against Hikaru Nakamura, actually, in this exact opening, and he tends to wait until black has decided whether to occupy the centre with pawns or to bring his knight out. And we've seen a couple of moves. White's king castling. White did challenge black's central pawn there, and black could have taken a pawn for free, but that pawn would have dropped off later on in the game. So black just keeping everything solid, defending all his pawns. OK,
and now what do you think about this turn of events? He's pushed the b-pawn forward just to support the pawns, but at the same time, this has allowed black to hop in with the knight into the centre.
Yeah, this is still well-known stuff. I've had this position many times, countless times with white and with black in blitz games. And this is my favourite move, just pushing a pawn forward 1 square, solidifying white's centre. The one thing Magnus doesn't want to do is actually trade off a set of pawns in the centre. That would free up black's position. Very simple plans.
And just as I was going to ask you to predict the next move for black, we have it on the board. And I know that you're very fond of this pawn move. I'm never very sure when Magnus brings out the noodles, because it looks like he does well and then suddenly blunder on the board.
Van Foreest in this position, and OK, black brings his other knight out instead, and I expect white to just maintain the status quo, just bringing the queen across 1 square. Actually, Magnus in a queen endgame, so just queens and pawns left on the board. He had a queen and 2 pawns against a lone queen, and it's tricky with best play. It should be a draw, but the final position was actually winning for Magnus.
It's solid.
Yeah, so if we do see a knight trade, as we have just done, we're expecting black's bishop to plant itself on this square. And that's because in these types of pawn structures, the 2 most important pieces are actually these fianchettoed bishops.
Plant the bishop into the centre is now. If it doesn't happen, then white is now given an opportunity to start chasing away the light square bishop with the knight. And
actually, it has happened, Ivanka. You have predicted it. The black bishop trying to neutralise white's piece here. And OK, white has a lot of choice. One of the moves I remember analysing and thinking was the critical test of black's setup is this one, pawn takes pawn. And normally you don't want to trade these set of pawns because here it's just completely symmetrical, the pawn structure, pretty much, no chance of passed pawns. But you have created a square for your queen to use because the black pawns have no control. Magnus does it. And you are also starting to finally create some threats with white. And this is actually very annoying to deal with.
Oh, OK, we do have a move. The queen has developed to the C line, and I'm fully expecting a rook to actually appear on that line quite quickly.
So black's queen defending the pawn next to it and also trying to counterattack against white's bishop, but that bishop has been protected now by white's rook on an open line. And Jan-Krzysztof Duda, he's offered that queen trade, so we're now heading towards an endgame. All the pieces are getting traded, but there is an imbalance, finally, because if you look at this C line, white's rook nicely placed, and black has a backward pawn on that line, like a microchip installed.
Exactly, of course.
And, OK, just a pawn push there from Duda. He's actually allowing a trade of bishops on white's terms, which is slightly surprising. If he doesn't want to trade these bishops, however, in the current position, maybe he could kick black's bishop away. He could push a pawn. No, he does trade, and, OK, now he lifts up his rook instead. The plan is to bring the other rook across, move the bishop away, and use the rooks on this line against the black pawn.
Can we kind of do an operation activate, trade off the pawns? OK, it's on the board.
Wow, OK, nice. You predicted it, and maybe... maybe you can bring the knight now into the centre of the board. Maybe this is one strategy.
Oh, David!
Wow, I was surprised. I thought this would never happen in a million years, but it's actually on the board. And now a big moment for Duda. He needs to activate this knight, I feel. OK, no, he pushes a pawn first, but this allows white's bishop to drop back. And how are you defending this pawn?
Totally. So, OK, he has retreated the bishop, just as you indicated.
Okay, and Duda just pushing his pawns forward one square.
Oh, OK, he has a different plan in mind. It didn't even occur to me.
Maybe we can keep an eye on the players while we show this, but that's surprising to me. Is Magnus frowning now? I would be frowning, because after white has just won a pawn for free, black's bishop has stepped back. Attacking this pawn, yes, but you can defend it simply, no?
Yeah.
I mean, for example, you can just bring your rook across to defend this pawn. You can even bring your knight across, maybe, to defend it. It looks like a clear pawn, an extra pawn advantage now for Magnus Carlsen.
He's used the knight to defend the pawn.
Here in the first round for Uzia.
It's not the end of the game. Yes, it's a pawn up, but at the moment, the black rooks are doing a good job of stopping white's extra pawn on the B-line, marching forward. I'm looking at the pieces. I think it's hard to improve the white knight and white bishop. They're pretty much stuck where they are, but this one is a nice move.
That's a nice move. Rook's behind the pawns. OK, now the knight centralises itself. That is a beautiful knight. There's no denying it, but...
is that enough, though? Black has one good piece.
No.
And, yeah, it shouldn't be enough, probably. And Magnus, he's getting greedy now. He's going after black's pawn there.
And did something there.
He's done it.
He did it.
He's a cool customer.
Yeah, I admire his patience.
Yeah, and that's good strategy long-term as well, because now black's pawn's there, especially that black pawn that has just pushed, it's locked down white's structure on the right side. So white is never going to get any activity on that side of the board.
You're just saying, hey, I have a... Whoa.
Magnus has done it, Ivanka. The top players in the world, they tend to take their opportunities to push if they can, especially with pawns in endgames, and white has pushed this pawn forward. OK, that's a nice move. The reason I was reluctant is because I thought it could happen at any time, and now it's harder to take this pawn because it's defended by black's bishop. But maybe Magnus is not being greedy. He doesn't care about this black pawn. It's not running away, and it's fine if black defends it. OK, this is actually Magnus's idea. He drops his bishop back. Look at all the pieces now eyeing up this pawn. Yeah.
So that these tactical points don't work.
Yeah, we saw in one variation, right, that black was suffering on the 8th row.
OK. Not quite sure I like Duda's last move. It just seems very, very defensive. You know, that he's lined up both his rooks in the defence of that black pawn on A3.
To just support a pawn push Harry the H-pawn one square to destabilise black's pawns.
David, we have something called an exchange sacrifice on the board, and it's a meanie.
That is. Look at Duda's face as well. He shook his head and kind of raised his eyebrows in appreciation.
It's a great move.
Yeah, and OK, we have to show this, but Duda is down to 10 seconds, so we have to keep an eye on him as well, because this move, giving up his rook on this square, most humans would never even dream of it. Bishop takes rook. It looks like you've just lost material with white, but after the pawn recaptures, look at these guys. They're simply going to march forward.
Wow.
They're going to push and become a new queen, or at least force black to give up one of his rooks or knights to stop them. Also, next move, no matter what, you'll take a pawn yourself as white, and this one will soon join its fellows, and too many pawns, it would be a pawn storm. So Duda doesn't take the bait. But what a classy move by Magnus, putting his rook on this square, cutting out this bishop from the game as well to capture this rook and then activate the black rook later on. OK, he does take this pawn. It's the most natural move. And, OK, we're headed straight for this position. But no, he doesn't bring his rook across, because that would allow white's knight to get active to a really nice centralised square. Instead, he shuts down the activity of his opponent's knight. I wouldn't be panicking here for... OK, he does offer a trade of knights. And note how, if black gets greedy with the black rook and takes the white bishop, after a couple of trades, we will see white's knight capture the black knight in the centre of the board. So he's not hanging his bishop. He's just counter-attacking against black's knight. And we do see a trade.
Bishop takes. And something that did worry me is this rook takes pawn.
Maybe you could retreat the white bishop, but why not just push a pawn?
OK.
The white king has one safe square in front of it. I don't think the black rooks have time to trap it there.
No, there's just no time.
He's really good at that kind of cold-blooded, just pure calculation. And, OK, Jan-Krzysztof Duda, he puts his rook behind one of the pawns, stopping that from advancing. But white can even just block off that rook. Yeah.
Step
he
back.
Does drop his bishop back.
Precise till the end, yeah. Maybe you just have to...
make a move.
Step your rook. OK. Now you can just walk your pawns through to the destination, and he's done it. OK, the rook is under attack, needs to move sideways.
And as soon as that rook moves, the other pawn will step forward. It's just game over. Those pawns are too strong.
1 second.
And therefore, Duda just resigns, about to lose.
Wow. In the first game in the quarterfinal, win for Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces.